I'd be a whole lot better if you hadn't made me into a fugitive from justice. When you spend a lot of time driving cars that go really fast, there's always this curiosity of what would happen if a cop actually saw me doing this. Am I going to be pulled from the car and beaten? Am I going to get arrested? Am I going to get a ticket I can't get out of? Am I never going to be able to get insurance again? I mean, certainly we've heard stories from anywhere, including this channel, of what happens when you get a terrible speeding ticket. But at the same time, in the US, there's a lot of variation. It's not like it is in a lot of European cities where there's just traffic cameras and speed cameras, and if you do this, that happens. It's not a one-to-one correlation, so it's always a little bit of an unknown. And I used to speed a lot more than I do now. I'm not saying it's a responsible thing to do, but if you do want to go fast in a fairly reasonable way on a public road, rallies can be a really good way to do that, because you're kind of insulated from some of the risk. Either you're in the back and the people in the front kind of take the brunt of whatever police attention's out there, or you're in the front and whatever you stir up might just impact the people that are behind you. And in either case, you've got some plausible deniability to say you're not the one that they're looking for. So if you want to get out there and see what your car can do, usually there are some opportunities in these kind of events to do that. And so about a month and a half ago, I was doing the Lux Rally event from Nashville to Las Vegas. And I was excited. It was kind of a long rally, 9 days. My wife was going to come with me for the first half, and a friend of mine, Tom Park, was going to come in and pick it up from Dallas. And so we got into Nashville, and they do a great job. It's a perfect food, dining experience. Everything's perfectly organized. It's kind of just an arrive, drive, and have fun kind of program. So we were really excited. My wife was excited to be going. We were driving the 430 Scuderia that I had bought because the Lamborghini didn't have air conditioning, and because most of my cars are, about half the time not working in their entirety. So I was excited to take the Ferrari out, even though it wasn't the most comfortable Grand Tourer for a trip like this, but it was going to be a lot of fun. And the first day went great. We led the pack. So we arrive in Memphis. We have a great dinner. We stay at a great hotel. Everything's very perfectly organized. And we head out the next morning towards Dallas. So we're out in front in a 3-car pack, and it's me and the Scud, a Porsche 911, and a Ferrari 599. And we're keeping a pretty good pace. But the thing about these rallies is, even though there's the perception from most of the people involved that everybody's constantly going these insane speeds, usually at the front, if you maintain a pace of about 90 or 100 and don't slow down, generally you're going to stay out in front of the people who kind of get bunched up or caught as people are making passing maneuvers or whatever the case may be, and then they need to go 130, 150 periodically to be able to keep their average at the same pace. I mean, very rarely is true exotic car rally pace that much even in the vicinity of Cannonball pace. And so no big deal. I had done exactly the same thing on their Miami to Mardi Gras event a few months earlier, and just generally driven 90, 100 miles an hour out in front and had no issues, and everybody else is having a fun time kind of playing in the background. It was a great time. And so I'm doing the same thing in this Ferrari, and we're out in front. We're using walkie-talkies to communicate, and I've got a Valentine one, and I'm running Waze. That's all I had time to set up in this car since I bought it the day before the event, but that's usually enough for me to make pretty good time along a road trip. And you're seeing a lot of noise on the V1, but that just kind of happens now. It's a very noisy kind of spectrum of radio frequencies that radar use, and some of the newer devices reduce the number of false positives and things that you'll see, but regardless, it tends to work for me. I've been using it for 15 years. And so I see some stuff, and I see one signal that probably indicates that there's a cop pretty close. And at about that same time, Jovian, who's 2 cars back in the 599, says, "Hey guys, I think we just passed a cop going in the other direction." Now at that moment, that's not a huge bother. We're on a divided highway, 2 lanes in either direction, and there's kind of a median divider with cords and like guardrails in the middle, so he can't just spin around and come after us. So the only 2 options really are, do we go insanely fast to try to get away from whatever the threat might be, or do we just drive a little bit more prudently for the next few miles and see if he's alerted anybody up ahead? And so that's kind of what we do on a rally. That's usually the best bet. You just kind of slow down, let everybody else catch up, and then you might start again in a few miles. So we do that, but right around the next bend, we see a Charger on the side of the road, and it's a police car, and he's right at the entrance to a rest area, and as he sees us, he pulls out in front of us and turns his lights on. At this point, we're going maybe high 80s, low 90s, worth some attention, but nothing alarming. It shouldn't be to him. And so all 3 of us obediently and immediately acquiesce. We pull over on the side of the road, and normal protocol for getting pulled over: turn the car off, keys on top of the dash, windows down, hands on the steering wheel. Just don't reach for anything. Don't do anything that might alarm him. But from there, things escalated rather quickly because this cop kicks his door open and jumps out of his car, gun drawn. And I'm like, whoa, 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 hands on top of the steering wheel at this point. And he's like, get out of the car. I'm like, whoa, whoa, okay. I'm unbuckling this hand here. And at this point, he's already pulling on my door handle, which doesn't unlock until I pull the inside handle. At that point, he pulls the door open, pulls me out of the car, and immediately handcuffs me. Now, keep in mind, my wife is in the passenger seat, and she's like, what's going on? I'm like, it's gonna be all right, just relax. He goes, get behind my car, goes to Matt in the Porsche behind me, handcuffs him with his spare set of handcuffs, goes back to his car, gets an extra set of handcuffs, and goes back and handcuffs Jovian. So we're all standing kind of around behind his car, and at this point the rest of the cars are kind of coming by. So about half the field went by us at a very low speed, noticing that we were all there, and the other half kind of snuck into the rest area so they could look through the trees to see what was going on, and I guess be there in case they needed to get our cars, because it didn't look like things were going all that well. And so he never says that we're under arrest, never reads us our rights, just immediately starts kind of detaining us and restraining us and just asking, what are y'all doing? And I'm like, okay, sir, sorry about this. We're just driving to Dallas with some friends. We got all these stickers. You can see it's at an event. We just left from Memphis. We're in Nashville the day before. We're not trying to hurt anybody or do anything crazy. And he's like, well, you just passed a state trooper going 111 miles an hour. Well, if you say so, but I really don't think we were going that fast. And, certainly we're not trying to. I mean, I understand that, that would be totally unacceptable, but also trust me that the car's going off a lot faster than that. So if we'd been trying to go fast, it would have been a whole lot more than 111. And I've had actually pretty good success with that line. It tends to kind of lighten the mood a little bit. But he's just heavy breathing, like super amped up. And you could tell that he had just gotten a radio call from this guy saying there's 3 exotic cars coming your way. You're just about to have a high-speed chase. And he was a young cop, and probably was really excited and adrenaline pumping, everything in this emotional high at what was about to happen. And then anticlimactically, we all just kind of pull over and are perfectly obedient. Now, your best strategy in any pullover, regardless of what's happening, is keep the cop talking. The more he talks, the more it humanizes you, the more he gets reassured that you're not out here as some menace to society, and it just ends up always resulting in a better outcome. Now, at this point, the cop that we'd passed has gone to an exit, circled back, and he pulls up behind us, and a couple other police cars are showing up as well, including one older cop that's in like this paratrooper uniform, this like full dark green army. Look at I don't know what it was. And he starts spouting off, hey, look at all these cool cars. Like, it's like an old cannonball. I mean, I remember these days and all this stuff, and talking about his cars and how fast he drives and all the fun he has. So I'm like, okay, we're at least moving in the right direction. But of course, we're still handcuffed here. And, of course, if you're being restrained by a cop, you can always ask them, am I under arrest? And if not, they're supposed to let you go, either with a ticket or whatever. In this circumstance, we weren't going to do that because I think the answer in that circumstance would have been, oh, yeah, you are, and let me read you your rights and throw you in the back of my car. So we're all just kind of talking. I explain that we do this sort of drive sometimes for charity, talk about the Cannonball Memorial Run, raising money for the families of fallen officers, and talk about our itinerary a bit, that we're just out having fun and enjoying some good cars. And most cops are car guys. We've seen and talked about that a lot here. And so when you start talking about cars, in most cases, they're ready to reciprocate that. I think he had some kind of a Mustang or something like that. And, it was all getting more and more friendly, and I can see his heart rate and respiratory rate dropping as we continue talking. Of course, Jovian and Matt don't really say much of anything. They're just kind of wide-eyed, not sure what's going on. And I do most of the talking. And so I'm still handcuffed and I'm leaning in his car. He's typing in all of our informations. He's taken our wallets out of our back pockets or wherever they were and has gotten everything. And it's very awkward and strange, but we're just kind of along for the ride at this point. And if he's finding out there's any warrants or crazy tickets or anything that he needs to be worried about, and of course there's no issues there. Everybody's insurance is valid. No alarm bells going off. And I'm talking to him and just giving him some insight about the cars and what we do and all this stuff, and just whatever I can say to keep him talking. And eventually he's like, all right, guys, I should take you to jail, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to give you the tickets. It'll be for the 111 for each of you and a reckless driving charge. And I'm like, man, we were kind of all by ourselves. Like, can it not be a reckless driving charge? Because in some states, if you're over a certain speed, they have to call it reckless driving. It's like by definition, over whatever 100 is reckless driving. But Arkansas is not one of those states. And so I'm like, all right, well, I can't talk him out of it. My shrewdest of negotiations were unsuccessful. We didn't meet right smack dab in the middle at a warning and a handshake. And so it takes a little while, probably 30, 45 minutes, and the girls are all freaking out as to what's going on, but everything gets calm. Megan snaps a few pictures, and eventually we're all happy and having fun. They let us out of me and Matt out of the handcuffs. They couldn't find the key to Jovian's for a little while, so he hung out in handcuffs for a little while longer than the rest of us. But eventually they do just give us these tickets. They tell us we're going to be able to pay them online. We don't have to appear or anything, and we can just go on our way. And so that's exactly what we did. Obviously, it kind of tempered the pace a little bit for the next little while, but eventually we got into Dallas. And the first thing that I did was call the ticket clinic, because a few days before leaving on this trip, I had closed a sponsorship for Ticket Clinic to be our monthly presenting sponsor for the month of September. So eventually you'll start to see their ads, but I had told them when I signed them up, I said, hopefully I don't require your services in the next couple of weeks, because I am about to do this rally across the country and back. And what they are is a company that helps you locate a local attorney in whatever jurisdiction where you get a ticket, because you always want a local attorney, or the chance that they go and play golf with the judge every Thursday, and they'll usually have a better outcome and just a friendlier negotiation than if you have a local lawyer show up. And regardless of that, you never want to just show up yourself and try to argue it, because if they see you and make you answer for whatever you did, they're just going to throw the book at you. And even if you have a license in a state where there's no reciprocity, you really don't want to pay a ticket going 111 miles an hour or a reckless driving charge, because at the end of the day, it's just going to keep you from getting insurance. Unfortunately, the only issue that's ever kept me from getting insurance was big diminished value claims in the past that weren't my fault, and some really expensive cars. And so sometimes insurance doesn't like that. So everything like that was fine, but I really did not want this to play out as a full conviction. So the guys at Ticket Clinic found me a couple different lawyers in Arkansas and got me in touch with the one they recommended as being the best, and I started talking to him. And very immediately he was like, man, this is kind of a bigger deal than I think even you understand. Apparently they've gotten a lot harsher on speeding. Arkansas was historically pretty lenient, but now a reckless driving charge apparently carried a minimum sentence of 5 days in jail. And I'm like, so you're telling me I'm going to have to go back to Arkansas to go to jail for 5 days? He's like, well, maybe. I mean, I'd like to think we can get it knocked down to like a lesser fine or a lesser circumstance, a lesser speed, and not have the reckless on there. But at this point, yeah, that's what I expect to have happen. And he said, also, there's no way they're going to let you just pay this thing online. Like that you can't pay the fee for a crime. Reckless driving is a criminal charge, not just a citation or a fine for speeding. So he's like, that's not how this is going to go. But about 10 days later, it did show up. And at that point, he had been like, well, I'm going to enter a not guilty plea remotely, so we don't have to show up, and then they'll assign us a trial date, tell me what the prosecutor is, and then I'll start negotiating. But he's like, he was going to be surprised if it showed up. And when it did, he was very surprised. And one of the guys had a Pennsylvania license. He just felt like paying it. He's like, I'm not going to worry about this. It won't come back on points. And his insurance is already very expensive, so he wasn't bothered by it. The other guy got a different attorney, and so we were both going to see what we could have happen. And in most cases, the hope is that you can kind of move it to like a non-points violation or a lower speed that doesn't transfer, whatever. In general, if you spend the money on hiring a lawyer, pumping some money into the local economy, and you're willing to pay some fines, usually they'll play ball. And so the trial date was coming up. It came and went, and he had said that he had submitted everything, so I was just like, all right, whatever. But a couple days later, I decided, you know what, I'm going to check their little online system and see what it says now. And it says failure to appear, conviction of the misdemeanor class C or D or whatever it was for reckless driving. And I'm like, whoa, what the heck? And so I screenshot it, send it to him, and he's, furious. He's like, I sent it, I've got proof, all this stuff, it'll be okay. And I'm like, well, figure it out, dude. Like, this is not acceptable, and it's probably going to reduce our leverage for negotiation moving forward. So let's see what happens. He tells me that he's on it and that everything's going to be okay, and eventually shoots me a text, says, your license isn't suspended. I'm like, well, that's good to know. And he's like, I'm working on the rest. And so he calls me back a couple days later. He said, how you doing? I'm like, well, I'd be a whole lot better if you hadn't made me into a fugitive from justice. But he said, I know, you're all right. Everything's going to be fine. I've got it knocked down. Here's your new court date, and I'll either have to go down there and appear, or hopefully we can just work it out between now and then. And so that date was a couple of days ago, and he called me afterwards. He said, all right, I was able to talk to him, and I got it down to negligent operation. And I was like, well, I don't even know what that means. He said, well, it's a county ordinance violation, so it's not really even like a highway moving violation. There's no points, it doesn't transfer. Carries the same fine. Coincidentally, they're still going to get their money, but at the end of the day, it doesn't go on my driving record. No insurance will know about it. Other than this video, nobody will ever really hear another word about it. And so that's why you do these things. I mean, obviously I had to pay something for the attorney, but it paled in comparison to the increase in insurance premiums that I would have enjoyed over the coming years if I had something like that on my driving record. So I guess all's well that ends well, or at least ends okay, and we enjoyed the rest of the rally, had an absolute blast. Of course, Ticket Clinic got another very, very satisfied customer, and I was pleased to have had them available for something like this, and managed not to get into too much more trouble, but we did get pulled over 3 more times, and they involved some a little bit more successful but shrewd negotiation, and one of them was an interesting story, and we'll just have to save that for another day.